Welcome to Silent Dose. Tonight we will share the story of an old lighthouse keeper, a gentle tale of solitude, memory, and the quiet beauty of the sea. Before we start our story, take a long breath and relax. Far from the noise of the town, on the edge of a rugged coastline, there stood a lighthouse, tall, pale, and weathered by years of salt and storm. At its base lived an old keeper, a man whose life had become woven into the rhythm of tides and winds. Each evening, as the last light of the sun faded into gold and rose, he would climb the narrow spiral staircase, step by careful step, until he reached the great lamp above. There, he would light the beacon, watching as its steady glow stretched out across the darkening waters, a promise to every sailor that the shore was near. When the flame was set and the great wheel turned with its slow, eternal patience, he would sit by the window, looking out over the restless sea. The waves rolled endlessly, curling white and soft at their crests. Gulls wheeled overhead, their cries fading into the night. The keeper listened and let the rhythm of water and wind sink into his chest. His nights were filled with silence, but not the silence of emptiness. It was a silence that breathed, a silence broken by the steady hum of the lamp, the sigh of the ocean, the distant whisper of a ship's bell far out at sea. Sometimes, he would close his eyes and memories would drift back to him. The laughter of children on a summer day when the lighthouse was new. The warmth of bread baked in the small oven by the door. The soft touch of his wife's hand before she passed. These moments lingered like the scent of salt carried on the wind, present, and yet untouchable. One night, he sat outside the door of the lighthouse, wrapped in a woolen shawl. The air was cool, the stars above clear and countless. He felt as though the heavens themselves had come closer, leaning down to rest over the sea. He breathed deeply, filling his chest with the coolness of night, letting it flow slowly outward again. As he listened, the waves seemed to speak, their rise and fall like words too ancient to understand. He imagined the sea telling its story of ships that had crossed it, storms that had raged, and the quiet dawns that followed. The keeper smiled faintly and let the mystery rest within him. On the far horizon, a single light flickered, perhaps a fisherman returning home. The beacon of the lighthouse reached out toward it, like one hand stretching to meet another. The keeper felt a warmth inside, knowing that his small duty, night after night, gave safety to strangers he would never meet. He rose slowly, his joints stiff but steady, and walked back inside. The spiral stairs creaked softly beneath his boots. Up once more to the lamp, he checked the flame steady as a heartbeat, turning with its endless rhythm. He lingered there, watching the reflection of the fire in the glass. The glow pulsed outward like a breath, like the ocean itself. He thought perhaps life is nothing more than this, light cast into the darkness. And to keep that light steady was enough. He sat again by the window, resting his chin on his hand. The sea stretched wide and endless. The stars shimmered gently, and the night carried him deeper into its calm. The old keeper awoke with the sound of waves pressing against the rocks, their steady motion like a drumbeat that had guided his sleep for decades. Morning light spilled across the small window, pale and silvery, softened by the mist rising from the sea. He moved slowly, stretching his hands, feeling the stiffness of age, yet also the comfort of routine. He boiled water in a small iron pot, the hiss of steam rising into the room. He poured the dark brew into a simple clay cup, inhaling its warmth. The taste was strong, slightly bitter, yet soothing, grounding him before another day of solitude. Outside, the gulls had returned, circling lazily, their wings catching the morning air. He watched them for a while, smiling faintly, as they dipped toward the waves and rose again, their cries echoing across the cliffs. After tending to the lamp, trimming its wick, polishing its glass until it shone, he stepped outside. The path along the shore was narrow, lined with tufts of grass bending in the breeze. He walked slowly, every step measured, his cane pressing lightly into the ground. The sea stretched vast before him, its surface glittering, as though thousands of diamonds had been scattered across it. The horizon seemed endless, yet inviting. He thought of the sailors out there, steering their vessels, trusting the glow of his lighthouse to guide them. A quiet pride filled him, though it was never spoken aloud. As the sun climbed higher, he rested on a flat rock overlooking the water. He let the warmth of the stone seep into his bones. He closed his eyes, listening to the tide. And with each breath, he felt himself sink deeper into the earth, as if the rock itself was holding him gently. Memories rose again, this time of his youth. Running across the shoreline with bare feet, the salt spray cool on his skin. The first time he climbed the lighthouse stairs, heart racing. The day he was handed the keys, trusted with the flame. He remembered the villagers cheering, proud of the young man who would keep their shore safe. He opened his eyes slowly, the waves still moving, unchanged, eternal. And he realized time had carried him so far, yet the sea had remained the same. Its constancy was a comfort, a reminder that though lives shifted, the ocean endured. As afternoon turned golden, he returned to the lighthouse. He prepared a simple meal, bread, cheese, olives, and a small pear. Each bite was unhurried, savored, as if the flavors carried the memory of the land itself. He chewed slowly, listening to the hum of insects just beyond the door. Later, as twilight approached, he climbed the spiral stairs again. The lantern awaited him, patient, timeless. He lit the flame, steady hands guiding the spark, until the glow rose once more to touch the night. Outside, the sky transformed. The clouds deepened into violet, the edges of the world softened. Stars began to awaken, first one, then another, until 1,000 lights shimmered above the keeper. He breathed deeply, feeling the vastness settle around him. He thought of the villagers down the coast, preparing their dinners, calling their children inside. He thought of ships sailing far away, men watching for his beacon, grateful for its shine. And in the midst of this, he felt his own smallness, yet also his place, as though the universe had carved out this role only for him. The night grew quiet. Only the endless rhythm of waves and the turn of the lantern. The keeper leaned against the window, eyes heavy. He whispered to himself, "The light will guide them, and the sea will guide me." And with that, he let his body rest, breathing in the slow peace of the night. The following evening, the air was softer, touched with the scent of pine carried from the hills. The keeper stood at the doorway of the lighthouse, watching the path that wound down toward the village. It had been some time since he had walked among the people there, yet tonight he felt a quiet pull. With steady steps, cane in hand, he made his way down the slope. The earth was cool beneath his boots, small stones shifting, grass brushing against his legs. The sea accompanied him, its voice constant, like a friend speaking in low tones. When he reached the village, the sun was leaning toward the horizon, coloring the walls in gold and rose. Children ran across the square, their laughter light and quick. Fishermen repaired their nets. Women drew water from the well. Lighthouse, heart filled with a quiet fullness. The stars had begun to appear, scattered like pearls across the sky. The beacon waited, tall and silent, its lamp unlit. And as he climbed the steps once more, he felt not alone, but carried, held by the rhythm of sea and song. He lit the lamp, its glow reaching outward again. He whispered softly, "May this light be for them, as their song was for me." And he sat by the window, listening, breathing, resting. The night stretched wide, calm and endless, holding him gently in its arms. The days passed gently, each marked by the rising and setting of the sun, each carried by the endless song of the sea. But one evening, as the keeper lit the lamp, he noticed the air was different, heavier, charged. The horizon darkened, clouds gathering like great shadows rising from the water. The wind carried a low moan, bending the grasses, rattling the shutters of the lighthouse. He knew a storm was coming. He tightened his cloak, climbed the stairs, and checked the flame again, making sure it was strong, steady, unyielding. Outside, the first drops of rain fell, sharp and cold. The sky cracked with sudden light. Thunder rolled across the sea like a drum of the gods. The keeper stood at the window, watching the waves rise higher, each one breaking harder against the rocks. Spray lashed against the glass, the roar filling his ears. For a moment, a flicker of fear touched him. The sea was vast, wild, unstoppable, and he was so small. He closed his eyes and breathed. Slowly, deeply, letting the air steady him. The sound of his own breath became a rhythm, a counter to the chaos outside. He whispered, "The storm passes, always it passes." He remembered other storms. Nights when the sea swallowed ships whole, when lightning split the sky, and he feared the lamp might fail. But each time, the storm had given way to calm. Each time the dawn had come. The thunder shook again, rattling the very stones. The waves crashed, but the lamp held firm, casting its beam across the furious waters. The keeper placed his hand against the glass, feeling the cold, feeling the strength of the flame within. He thought, even in darkness, even in fury, light can endure. He sank into a chair, letting the storm rage around him. Instead of fighting the sound, he listened. The crash of waves, the howl of wind, the beat of rain. All together, they formed a kind of music, wild, ancient, unbroken. Hours passed, though he did not mark them. At last, the storm began to tire, its voice softening, its fury spent. The rain thinned, the wind eased. And in the silence that followed, the sea sighed, long, deep, like a creature returning to rest. The keeper rose slowly, stretching stiff limbs. He looked out across the horizon. Clouds still lingered, but beyond them, a faint glow began to stir. The promise of morning, waiting just beyond the veil. He smiled, weary but calm. He had faced the storm not by resisting, but by breathing, by listening, by waiting. And in that stillness, he had found a peace that the storm could not take. The lamp still burned, its circle of light unwavering. The sea rolled onward, steady once more. And the keeper, with quiet eyes, let himself rest again. The night slowly faded, giving way to the first fragile light of dawn. The storm clouds broke apart, drifting like tired ships across the pale sky. The keeper climbed the spiral stairs once more, each step slow, each breath deep. At the top, he opened the hatch and stepped out onto the narrow balcony. The air was cool, damp with the scent of rain. Below, the sea still moved heavily, waves swollen, yet calmer than before. Above, the horizon stretched wide, a band of soft silver slowly touched with gold. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting. The keeper rested his hands on the railing, leaning into the wind. He felt the salt cling to his beard, the chill sink into his skin. And then, with the gentlest certainty, the sun began to rise. Its first rays spilled across the water, turning each wave into molten fire. The sky shifted from gray to pink, from pink to orange, until the whole horizon glowed. The lighthouse cast its last pale beam, soon no longer needed. The keeper watched, silent, as the day pushed back the remnants of night. He thought, how many dawns have I seen, and yet each feels new. Birds rose from the cliffs, their wings catching the light. Their cries cut across the air, sharp yet joyous. The keeper closed his eyes, listening, letting the sound join with the steady lap of waves. Together, they formed a hymn, sung not for him alone, but for the world entire. He drew a deep breath, the air filling his lungs with freshness. And he felt something stir within him, a softness, a strength. He thought of all that had passed, storms weathered, nights of silence, days of memory. And yet here he stood still steady, watching a new day begin. He whispered, "The sea endures, the light endures, and so shall I." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of years. They carried the weight of solitude, of devotion, of the endless cycle of night and day. As the sun climbed higher, the keeper descended. Inside, the lamp flickered, its purpose fulfilled. He trimmed the wick, let the flame die gently. The great lens stilled, the room grew quiet. He stepped back outside, feeling the warmth grow across the stones. He sat upon a rock, his cane laid beside him. The sea stretched vast and gleaming, each ripple alive with light. And for a long while, he simply sat breathing, watching, resting. In that stillness, he felt no need for words, no need for thought. The dawn itself was enough. The gift of another day, another tide, another chance to notice the beauty that waited in every moment. The day unfolded quietly, the sky bright and wide, the sea alive with slow movement. The keeper moved about his small dwelling, tending to simple tasks. He brewed tea, its steam curling gently in the morning light. He mended a net, not for fishing, but simply to keep his hands busy. Hours passed with ease, the rhythm of life unhurried. He stepped outside often, pausing to watch the waves, to trace the path of gulls in the sky. Every sound carried peace, the hush of water, the call of distant birds, the soft rustle of grass along the cliffs. It was as if the world itself was speaking slowly, kindly, telling him there was nothing to fear. At midday, he rested, leaning against the sun-warmed wall of the lighthouse. He closed his eyes, listening, letting the warmth sink into his bones. Dreams drifted lightly across his mind, memories of youth, voices long gone. But instead of sadness, he felt gratitude. Gratitude that those voices had once filled his life. Gratitude that memory itself was a gift. When evening returned, the sea darkened, the air cooled. The keeper once more prepared the great lamp. With practiced care, he trimmed the wick, polished the glass, and lit the flame. Slowly, the beam returned, stretching far into the deepening night. He stood beside it, watching as it swept the horizon, steady and patient. The storm of the night before was gone. Now only calm remained. The sea shimmered under the growing moonlight, vast and eternal. He thought life is much the same, storms come, they pass, and in the end, stillness follows. The thought rested softly in him, not as a lesson, but as truth. A truth learned not in words, but in years of keeping watch. At last, he descended, the spiral stairs echoing under his steps. In his room, he settled into his chair, the lamp above casting its steady glow. He let his eyes close, his breathing slow. The sea outside whispered its lullaby, waves rising and falling, again and again. The keeper drifted gently into sleep, wrapped not in silence, but in the endless rhythm of the sea. A rhythm as old as the world, steady, certain, eternal. And so, as you listen, may you too find that rhythm. May you feel the calm of the lighthouse, the strength of its beam, the peace of the waves. May it carry you into your own quiet rest, into sleep, deep and unbroken. This was Silent Dose. Thank you for listening. May the night be gentle, and may your dreams be kind.